Senators both on the Republican side of the aisle and the Democratic side of the aisle. Now, as you said, there was a lengthy delay. They were supposed to start at 1:30 today, but they kept pushing that start time back, and they didn't even convene until 5 p.m. That has to do with the fact that many Republicans can't agree on what this bill should be. Some feel that the bill doesn't go far enough. They think that there needs to be even more restrictions when it comes to banning abortion in Indiana, and others feel that there needs to be more of a lenient stance on it. Now, the way that the bill reads now, abortion, as you said, would be legal with some exceptions: the mother's life, rape, incest, and if the baby has any fatal fetal anomalies. But there are stipulations when it comes to rape and incest. If a victim is under the age of 16, she has 12 weeks. If the victim is under the age of 16, she does have 12 weeks to seek an abortion. If she is over the age of 16, she has 8 weeks. Now, the reason that the bill was being heard last is because the author of the bill, Senator Sue Glick, asked for it to be heard after other bills.
We need to be very clear. Not one person testified in support of Senate Bill 1. But where we did find common ground, no one wants to be forced to have an abortion, and no one wants to be forced to have to carry a pregnancy.
This is a process, and there'll be second reading amendments. Then if they get past that, then there'll be a third reading probably on Friday, and these bills will then pass over to the House of Representatives.
Definitely a process, and part of that process taking place right now, working their way through those 62 amendments. But there are two other bills that are being heard in the Senate. One of them is Senate Bill 2, which would address needs of women who have unwanted pregnancies. Now, there were 18 amendments to that. Lawmakers did make their way through those. There's also Senate Bill 3, which is the inflation bill. And what's interesting about the Senate's bill for that is that it doesn't include that $225 taxpayer refund that the governor called this special session for in the first place. Now, it does have some other things in there. It would cap the gas tax for June of next year, and it would also suspend residential tax utilities for 6 months. Now, you might be wondering what happens after today. So after today, this is what's called a second reading. Following today, senators will meet tomorrow for the third reading. Now, if all the bills pass, they will head to the House and go through this whole process again. They'll have a first reading, they'll go to conference committee, and then they'll go back to the full House where more amendments will happen, and then the third reading is when any of this could become law or sent to the governor's desk to be signed. So we'll be keeping you updated both on air and online. We have a live blog. We have somebody in there right now, so we'll be keeping you up to date as much as we can. Mark, Nicole, back to you.
Meredith, earlier in the week, there was some talk that we could expect a vote as soon as this Friday. Is it still looking that could happen tomorrow, given what you're seeing and hearing down there at the State House?
Yeah, it just depends. You know what? As I said, there are several senators who can't come to an agreement, specifically on the Republican side. As I said, there's many people who don't agree with the bill as it is. As you heard, both Senator Glick and Senator Yoder say we can only have one common consensus, and it said none of us agree. So it looks like it's going to. I've heard that that's why the caucus was meeting for so long. So we'll have to wait and see tomorrow. That is the million-dollar question mark.
Our Meredith Hackler live at the State House keeping us updated, and with the uncertainty still surrounding the future of abortion in Indiana, we spoke with a professor from the IU School of Law. She's been following Senate Bill 1 all week and talks about what she expects to happen with this proposed legislation.
I do believe that Senate Bill 1 will actually get more severe because we saw that the legislators who introduced it as a moderate bill, as a kindler, gentler abortion bill that would have no criminal penalties for doctors, no criminal penalties for women. But soon we saw criminal language show up.
Now, all week you've heard from lawmakers and citizens sharing what they think of Senate Bill 1. Tonight, we're showing you where three people in the medical community stand on this issue.
Comprehensive, evidence-based reproductive health care is a cornerstone of child and adolescent health. Access to safe and legal abortion is an essential component of this reproductive health care. This is an issue of both health and justice.
We believe our commitment to patients and our dedication to leading care teams that provide high quality, objective, and evidence-based emergency care is first and foremost in our minds at all times. We feel the current language within this bill does provide these protections within emergency medicine, and we encourage in any modified or amended language to continue to provide these protections for emergency physicians and our patients.
If your goal is to save lives, safe, legal abortion, as recommended by 78 American medical societies, is the way to do that. If an abortion ban is passed, the only way to put fewer Americans at risk is the inclusion in the bill of exemptions for rape and incest and removing the affidavit requirement that hinders access to care.
This week started off with thousands of people protesting inside and outside of the State House. It is no surprise that people who are in favor of pro-abortion rights don't like Senate Bill 1, which aims to further restrict abortion access. But some anti-abortion advocates also dislike the proposal. On Wednesday, they said the original version of SB 1 doesn't go far enough.
If I were to write a bill with the intention of having it not be enforced, Senate Bill 1 would be the bill I would write. It is totally unenforceable and as such renders it basically worthless.
We have done everything we can do for 50 years to see the reversal of Roe. We did not do that to get a weak Senate Bill 1.
One state lawmaker went as far as resigning from the Republican caucus over his disagreements with Republican plans for abortion legislation. The Indiana Senate Majority Communications Office confirms Republican State Senator Mike Young resigned from the Republican caucus. Young represents Indianapolis. The Indiana Capitol Chronicle reports Young opposes the rape and incest exception in the proposed abortion ban. That's an issue some other Republicans have with the proposed legislation.
Right now, as we've seen, there's no consensus so far among those who want to restrict abortion rights. WRTV's Ray Steele is with our political insiders and joins us now with the discussion.
There is still a massive division within the party that's undeniable about the right thing to do here. We've seen a lot of debate already in committee. We've seen a lot of testimony from the public. I actually think the words that Senator Young used were meant literally in some ways, picking who lives and who dies. That's a lot of what this is about, and it's a very raw emotional issue. I'm not inside Senator Young's head. I don't know. I wasn't in the caucus room when he made that determination. But I think at the end of the day, we're going to see that this is something that just really hits home for people. And there may be drastic moves like that happen just because of the nature of what we're talking about.
People are frustrated on both sides. They're saying, no, this bill is not where they wanted it to be. And I think it's a time for legislators to really take into consideration that we didn't get to hear from all Hoosiers. So while, legislators have been, opening the opportunity up for public testimony to happen, that stopped at a certain point in time. Republican legislators cut it off early, and not all voices were heard in this process. So I think that's one of the biggest issues that we have. And when that was brought forth by the Democrats in a super minority report, it was shut down. And so I think that's one of the things we have to consider is that not all of the voices of Hoosiers right now are being considered in this process. And a lot of these restrictions are honestly worse than what we thought they were going to be. Now we've added criminal penalties into this bill, and it would allow for doctors to have, up to 1 to 6 years in prison and a $10,000 fine if they decided to be able to give an abortion to a childbearing person in the state of Indiana. That's something that I think we're going to have and see an outpouring of physicians ending up leaving because they're going to have to make a decision about whether or not they save a patient.
Well, during this special session, we are seeing the legislative process play out in just days, as opposed to the weeks or months that a piece of legislation would usually take to make its way through the State House. Here's a reminder of how a bill becomes a law here in Indiana. It all starts with an introduction by a lawmaker in either the House or Senate.
This is Senate Bill 1. for the special session.
Next, the bill is assigned to a committee which meets to hear testimony from the public on the bill.
I'm testifying in opposition of Senate Bill 1.
And I'm opposed to Senate Bill 1 as it is currently written.
Following testimony, the committee votes on the bill and any amendments.
I vote no on this bill.
Today, Mr. Chairman, I vote yes.
And with that, I vote no.
I'm going to vote yes today.
Next, the bill goes back to the full Senate chamber for a second reading. Lawmakers debate and vote on more amendments, which could once again change the language of the bill. Once a final version of the bill is approved, it's up for a third reading. This gives lawmakers another chance to debate, but not change the bill's contents. And then, a vote. All of this for just one chamber. If the bill passes the Senate, it moves to the House or vice versa. The whole process repeats, and if any changes are made, a conference committee with members of both the House and Senate will hash out the differences and come up with the bill's final language. Now, if the final bill gets enough votes in both chambers, it's up to the governor to make it a law or issue a veto. And as we've seen just this year, lawmakers can vote to override a veto by the governor.
And that whole process is run by leaders who are elected by you, the voter. And we want to hear from you about whether decisions made by lawmakers on abortion will impact the way you vote in the future. Let us know by going to WRTV.com/vote now. You can weigh in from your phone or your computer. This is what our live voting page looks like. As you can see here, most of you say this will impact your vote in the future, but keep letting us know what you think, and we'll check back in on these results. Inflation relief for Hoosiers, 2 proposals in the State House. We break those down and which may be better in the long run. That's next on Special Session Need to Know.
The other major issue under debate at the State House, inflation relief for Hoosiers.
Two different bills designed to help Hoosiers are on the table. Discussion in the House is done tonight. They spent the afternoon considering amendments to their plan.
WRTV's Rachel Wilkerson breaks down what each bill could mean for the state.
House Bill 1001 would give Hoosier taxpayers an automatic $225 refund. If this plan eventually becomes law, tax-exempt residents would have to file a claim.
With the Department of Revenue having the duty of verifying the affidavits submitted for accuracy.
During testimony, the Indiana Department of Revenue expressed concerns about the bill, saying 50% of qualified Hoosiers haven't even received the first tax refund of $125 that was approved in May.
I am concerned that the first check that was approved back a few months ago did not arrive at the mailboxes for all Hoosiers. I'm concerned about basically the timeliness of sending more money to Hoosiers.
For the other proposal, Senator Fatty Cordora says Senate Bill 3 would cap the gas tax at 29.5 cents per gallon until next June. Right now, Hoosiers pay 61 cents a gallon. The bill would also suspend the sales tax on residential utilities for 6 months.
The Senate bill is a much better policy than the House bill. Limiting the pain at the pump for Hoosiers is a much more prudent step.
Ball State economist Michael Hicks favors the Senate bill, saying it's more beneficial to the state.
The $225 repayment is really a stimulus because it's not tied to the amount that you paid in taxes. So adding a stimulus back to the state economy at a time of unusually high inflation simply adds to the problem that brought us inflation in the first case.
State Representative Justin Moed says there will likely be compromises, but says the end goal is the same, helping Hoosiers.
You know, the state's sitting on over $1 billion in surplus, which could be $7 billion by the end of the year. And we think that if they're not going to invest that money into programs, then we might as well make sure Hoosiers get some relief because of high gas prices, inflation.
The House will pick back up discussion of inflation relief tomorrow at 1:45 p.m. Since the inflation relief bills are different, lawmakers say there will likely be a compromise.
We're going back to our political insiders discussing their thoughts on the plans to provide financial relief to Hoosiers.
I think we do have an opportunity, and I do know that Democrats do want to make sure that Hoosiers can see some kind of relief. That's something that we all can agree on because we know how bad Hoosiers are struggling right now. So it was good to be able to see that some of the amendments that were brought forth, specifically one by Representative Campbell, was included in this process. And so I do think that Democrats do want to be able to see some kind of relief. I think the issue that we see here is that in regards to other bills, especially with Senate Bill 2, we were able to see that amendments were brought forth to be able to provide more funding to other issues when it comes to K through 12, mental health, maternal and infant health, and public health. All of those ways in which we could improve quality of life and give some kind of relief or some kind of, advancement to the programs and resources that we can offer here in our state, they were all shut down.
I do think that we are going to see some inflation relief effort come out of the special session. Like you said, this was the intent before the overturn of Roe versus Wade. I think it's important on the minds of legislators. I think it is actually valuable that we're having the discussion on both methods for inflation relief. There was pushback on both sides. Is the 225 number, the return, enough? Would it reach all Hoosiers? Which was there was an effort by the House to address that. And then on the other side, when we're talking about reductions in the gas tax, well, are we benefiting people that are really just driving through the state and not, benefiting Hoosiers directly enough? There's flaws in both. There's positives to both. I think it's actually productive that we're having a discussion on both options to find out where the best middle ground is in order to help Hoosiers combat inflation that's really just getting worse every day.
We've been asking you about the impact of recent changes to abortion rights at the federal and state levels, and we want to know if those changes will influence the way you vote in the future. Hundreds have already weighed in, and most say yes. About 16% say no.
And you can still vote by going to WRTV.com/vote now on your phone or your computer. You can also find a link in the WRTV app. Right now, the Indiana Senate is still at the State House discussing Senate Bill 1. As we've mentioned here, Senate Bill 1 bans abortions with a few exceptions. Tomorrow, the bill could get its third reading in the Senate. If it passes on the third reading, SB 1 would then move to the House.
Discussion, debate, protests, all hallmarks of the special session thus far. We look back at the week and forward to the days ahead.
Bands off our bodies! Bands off our bodies!
It shouldn't be a discussion. We should be pro-life because we as the Indiana state are pro-life.
These laws are trying to be enacted to prevent my choice and to prevent the choice of all women.
I was unplanned. My birth parents weren't married. They weren't financially stable enough for me. We were homeless and they were drug addicts. All reasons you deem appropriate to call for my death.
I couldn't have a child, 2 children under the age of 1. In daycare. So I knew that it was time for me to make that choice to have an abortion.
The front page of our website is dedicated to coverage of the special session. See how everything is unfolding at WRTV.com.
And if you want your voice to be heard, make sure to call your senator's office.
Thanks for joining us. Have a good evening. We'll see you at 11.